My name is Aaron Nader. I am married and the father of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Before my conversion, I followed Islam wholeheartedly. My family came from a lineage considered sacred in the Muslim world. I was a direct descendant of the 7th Imam, Musa al-Kazim, which placed me in a bloodline that traced back to the Prophet Muhammad himself, a heritage that carried both great pride and great responsibility. My father was a highly respected sheikh, the leader of one of the largest Islamic clans in the region, the Al-Nader Almi. Our family was not only influential, but also lived in comfort and privilege. I grew up in an environment where tradition, honor, and devotion were not just values we spoke about, they were the very air we breathed. From our morning prayers to the way meals were served, everything was steeped in a sense of sacred duty. For many years, my life faithfully followed the principles of Islam. From an early age, I understood that I was expected to be a living example to others, a standard of piety and discipline. I prayed at the appointed times without fail, fasted during the month of Ramadan, and sought to apply every teaching of the Quran as precisely as possible. In my mind, this was the path to honor before God and man. But in 1987, during my military service, something happened that would alter my course forever. For the very first time, I encountered a Christian in person. I had known Christians existed in Iraq, but I had never spoken to one, never shared a meal or a conversation. My circle of friends was entirely Muslim, and everything I believed about Christians came from what I had been taught through the Quran and our religious leaders. To us, they were infidels, people who had strayed from the truth and become impure. That was the mindset I carried the day I met Kareem, a young Christian who happened to cross my path in the barracks. I expected arrogance or disrespect, but to my surprise, Kareem was nothing like I imagined. He was polite, honest, and there was a quiet strength in his eyes that unsettled me. Instead of contempt, I began to feel pity for him. I thought to myself, this young man has no idea he's on the road to eternal destruction. If I don't help him, who will? I convinced myself that guiding him to Islam would be a noble act. So one afternoon, I approached him directly and asked if he could give me a copy of the Gospel. My plan was to read it for the purpose of exposing its flaws. I was determined to prove, as we were taught, that the Bible had been corrupted over time. But Kareem didn't hand it to me immediately. Instead, he smiled and said, "Aaron, I will gladly give you the Gospel, but first, I ask you to do one thing for me. Read your Quran again, but this time don't just recite the words. Read it as if you are searching for the very heart of its meaning. Think about what each sentence is truly saying." His request caught me off guard. I had been reading the Quran since I was a boy, especially during Ramadan when we recited it in its entirety. But he was talking about something different, not tradition, not routine, but deep reflection. His words stirred something in me. I realized that while I could recite many verses from memory, I had rarely paused to think about their meaning in depth. That same day, I decided to find a trusted imam for my own branch of Islam to guide me in this. I knew that asking such questions could be dangerous, but this imam had known me since childhood and regarded me almost as family. He listened patiently, then said something I will never forget. "Aaron, to truly understand the Quran, you must do more than recite it. You must master classical Arabic, learn its grammar, and study every surah alongside the hadith and commentary. Without this, you risk misunderstanding the intent of the words." Then he added something that nearly broke my resolve. "To interpret it correctly, you will need to study at least 500 books on the surahs." 500 books. The number stunned me. It seemed impossible for someone like me, who had military duties and a family waiting back home. For a moment, I wanted to abandon the idea altogether, but there was a restlessness in my heart, a nagging whisper I could not ignore, urging me forward. I began again, this time reading the Quran with purpose. Every time a question arose, and they came often, I went to the Imam. For every answer he gave, 10 more questions surfaced. Gradually, my studies led me into areas I had never dared explore. I came across accounts in the most respected biographies of Muhammad that disturbed me deeply. Stories of violence, looting, and acts that did not align with the image I had been taught since childhood. Worse still, I learned about his 63 wives. The first, a woman 20 years his senior, and the last, a girl of only 6 years old. These discoveries broke something inside me. I could no longer silence the doubts in my heart. The decision to leave Islam was one of the most painful I have ever made. It felt like tearing away a part of my identity, my family, my heritage. But my conscience would not let me remain in something I no longer believed to be true. Months later, I encountered Kareem again. He recognized me instantly, walked over, and with a warm smile said, "So Aaron, do you still want that gospel I promised you?" This time, I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said firmly. The night before he gave it to me, I had a dream that would mark me forever. I stood beside a narrow stream, no more than a meter wide. On the opposite bank stood a man unlike any I had ever seen. His presence drew me like a force beyond this world. It was as if my very soul recognized him. I longed to cross over to him, but as I stepped forward, something invisible held me back. I hovered above the water, stuck between the banks, my heart pounding in desperation. Then he looked at me with eyes full of compassion and said, "If you want to come to me, you must first eat the bread of life." I woke suddenly, my mind racing. Bread of life? I had never heard such a phrase before. It was unfamiliar, yet I knew in my heart it carried profound meaning. The next day, Kareem handed me the gospel. My hands trembled as I took it. I stepped aside to a quiet corner, took a deep breath, and decided to open it at random. The page fell open to the Gospel of John, chapter 6. The very first words my eyes landed on were, "I am the bread of life." At that moment, I stopped, my eyes filled with tears. It was as if God himself were calling me. It was as if Jesus himself had stepped into my dream and whispered with a certainty that pierced my soul, "It is I." That single moment changed everything. A deep and unshakable peace, something I had never known, settled over me. It wasn't fleeting or shallow. It filled every part of me, driving away the shadows of fear and confusion that had once ruled my life. Right then and there, I knew my decision was final. I surrendered my life completely to Christ. I embraced his words, trusted in his promises, and felt an eagerness to seek out a Christian community. I wanted to meet brothers and sisters in the faith, to worship together, and perhaps for the very first time in my life, take communion. I knew there were many Christians in Baghdad, so I set out, determined to find them. But after the dream and my first encounter with the gospel, my life was turned upside down. Following Jesus was not going to be a simple matter of belief. It was going to cost me dearly, and I began to understand that almost immediately. I reached out to different Christian communities, but one after another, the doors closed in my face. I did not hold it against them. I knew the truth. They were afraid. In the Quran, there are passages that explicitly command the death of those who abandon Islam. And one of Muhammad's most well-known hadiths leaves no room for doubt. Whoever changes his religion must be put to death. If that person left Islam for Christianity, the betrayal was considered even greater, an unforgivable act of treason. It wasn't long before my own family began to suspect something was different about me. The truth surfaced unexpectedly through my youngest son, who was only 4 years old. One day, with no real understanding of what he was doing, he made the sign of the cross in front of them. That innocent gesture was enough to ignite suspicion. They began searching our house, going through every drawer and shelf until they found it, my copy of the gospel. That was all the proof they needed. Soon after, I was arrested and handed over to the Islamic religious authorities. They issued a fatwa, a religious decree, ordering my death. My father, despite his love for me, could not accept what I had done. He used every method he could think of to make me renounce Jesus. He threatened me with consequences I knew he was capable of carrying out. He pleaded with me, his voice breaking. He tried to remind me of our family's legacy, our heritage, the honor I was throwing away. But my mind was made up. I could not deny the one who had found me, even when I had not been seeking him. And so, I was sent to prison. I remained there for 1 year and 4 months. The first 3 months were pure torment. a nightmare I rarely speak of. I was beaten, tortured, and humiliated. Every blow, every insult was designed to make me renounce my faith. Yet, even in those moments, I clung to the words of Jesus. For my name's sake, you will be persecuted. Those words gave me strength. They reminded me that I was suffering for him, and in that strange way, I found joy. They placed me in the most dreaded place in Iraq, the Secret Service prison. Its reputation was one of unrelenting horror. Political prisoners, religious dissenters, many never came out alive. The interrogations never stopped. They always returned to the same three questions. What church do you attend? What is the name of the pastor who guides you? Who was the Christian who first told you about this faith? I refused to give them anything. I guarded those names, not only to protect the people who had helped me, but because I knew that revealing them would destroy lives. Then, by the grace of God, a miracle happened. I was released. It wasn't because they had a change of heart or believed I was innocent. It was because God himself opened a door no man could close. But my release came with a harsh reality. In Iraq, I could never openly live as a Christian, much less be baptized. If I stayed, my family would not stop until I was dead. I believed without question that they could stage an accident, set fire to my home, or kill me in my sleep. I had no choice but to leave. I fled to Jordan with almost nothing, no visa, no official documents, only the hope and faith burning within me. In the city of Zarqa, on July 22nd, 2000, after 13 long years of waiting, I was baptized. The moment the water covered me, it felt as though every wound, every prison wall, every night of fear had been worth enduring. But my journey was not over. One day I traveled to the capital, Amman, to do some shopping. I thought it would be a normal day, but fate had other plans. As I was walking through the market, I suddenly found myself face to face with an uncle and four of my brothers. Their eyes lit up in recognition. Their smiles were polite but tense. They came closer and said in low voices that it would be better to get into their car, so we don't attract attention. I knew I couldn't refuse. Being in the country illegally meant that any trouble could lead to my arrest, and that would surely end with my deportation back to Iraq. I got in the car. We drove for nearly 20 minutes until we reached a remote valley, hidden deep among the mountains, far from any sign of life. At first, they spoke softly, almost as if we could reason things out, but soon the conversation shifted. My uncle's expression hardened, and his tone dropped any pretense of kindness. Your father gave us a clear order, he said, bring you back, dead or alive. They tried every tactic, reminding me of our family's honor, warning me of the shame I had caused, even threatening my safety in ways that made my skin crawl. But I was unshakable. I knew to whom I belonged now, and I was ready to face whatever came. I began to speak to them about Jesus, about the love I had found, the peace I experienced after baptism, and the transformation that Islam had never given me. I could see something shift in their eyes, though they tried to conceal it. Finally, my uncle stood, his eyes cold and unwavering. If you don't come back with us, he said slowly, I'll carry out the fatwa myself. With courage only God could have given me, I looked him in the eye and said, if you're going to kill me, then do what you must. He didn't pause. He raised the gun and pointed it straight at my chest. Your disease is Christ, he said with venom, and there's no cure for it. Then he pulled the trigger. The bullet struck me with full force. For an instant, I believed it was over. There was no escape, nowhere to run. I surrendered completely to God's will. Then something beyond understanding happened. I heard a voice, a woman's voice, gentle but urgent, saying, run, run, escape. Without thinking, my body reacted. My legs moved on their own, carrying me forward with a speed I didn't think I had left. Behind me came the sharp crack of gunfire, 5 shots in total. The sound echoed in the narrow valley, chasing me as I ran. The bullets sliced through the air so close that I felt the wind of their passing against my face and neck. Every breath was ragged, every step a desperate bid for life. The sound of bullets slicing through the air surrounded me, some passing so close I felt the wind rip past my head. The scene seemed like a nightmare. I ran, not with any clear plan, but as if I were being pulled forward by something far greater than myself. My legs pounded the ground with desperate rhythm until, a few minutes later, a sharp, searing pain tore through my left leg. The world seemed to stop in that instant. I had been hit. The force sent me crashing to the ground, powerless, my strength draining as darkness closed in. I lost consciousness there, in the middle of nowhere, the silence around me broken only by the echo of my own fading heartbeat. When I woke, the harsh white light above told me I was in a hospital. I had no memory of how I got there. My mind was foggy, my body heavy. I caught fragments of a conversation, a doctor speaking to someone beside the gurney, his voice calm but serious. "He's been shot. Call the police," he said. A surge of panic rushed through me. If my name reached the authorities, it would all be over. Forcing my voice to remain steady, I addressed the doctor directly. "Please, before notifying the police, examine me first. If it isn't critical, I'll leave and seek treatment elsewhere. My situation is complicated." He studied me for a moment, as if weighing my words against protocol. Then, with a slight nod, he began his examination. "You've taken a single bullet to the left leg," he explained. "It's lodged in the muscle, but no bone was struck." Relief washed over me so suddenly that I nearly wept. I was still alive. I could walk out of here. The first person I thought of was Sister Liza, a nun who had been quietly helping us since our arrival in Jordan. I called her immediately, my voice trembling. As I explained, she wasted no time. Within an hour, she had sent a taxi for me, and soon I was home. Waiting for me, there were 3 doctors and my sister. They moved quickly, inspecting my leg. The entry wound was clear enough, but there was something that puzzled them. They could find no exit wound at all. They began contacting hospitals to arrange surgery, but every single one refused to admit me without a police report. My mind churned with fear. I couldn't risk it. Then, without warning, something even stranger happened. The opposite side of my leg, the place where the bullet should have exited, suddenly began bleeding heavily. The doctors scrambled to understand what they were seeing, but none of them could locate the bullet. One of the men present was a surgeon and a Christian. He was baffled. "The trajectory makes no sense," he said, frowning. "It doesn't appear to have traveled in a straight line at all." The next day, they managed to sneak me into a military hospital where that surgeon worked. There, an X-ray was taken, and the result left everyone speechless. The bullet was gone. The surgeon turned to me, his expression a mix of disbelief and something deeper, reverence. "The bullet entered from the front of your leg," he said slowly, "passing through muscles, tendons, even grazing bone, and yet it caused almost no lasting damage. It somehow moved inside, in a zigzag path, before vanishing entirely. From a medical standpoint, this is unexplainable." After that, our fear grew even more. My wife, my children, and I began moving every single night, never sleeping in the same place twice. The fatwa against me, my death sentence, was still active. It could be carried out anywhere, at any time. And then God opened another door. France accepted our request for asylum. It was a miracle I had never dared to hope for. This country, one I had never imagined I'd even visit, became our home. The fatwa remains to this day. And yes, the danger is still real. But here, even with that threat hanging over me, I live in peace. Sometime after settling here, I began reaching out to my family. It wasn't easy. Many refused to speak to me, but eventually I was able to speak with some of my brothers. And here is the most extraordinary news I can share. One of those brothers, a man I still speak to over the phone, has given his life to Christ. Today he is a completely changed man, baptized, living as a disciple of Jesus. And the most incredible part, he was one of the men who had been there that day. Yes, one of those who had fired at me. The same hand that once pulled the trigger against me now lifts itself in prayer to the same God who saved us both. For me, this is the clearest proof that God doesn't just protect and restore. He orchestrates every detail of our stories, even in moments that seem hopeless, unjust, or unbearably dark. He didn't just save my life, he saved my soul. And by his grace, he saved my brothers too. So the first thing I must do is give thanks to the Lord for this immeasurable grace, for touching the one who by human reasoning seemed the least likely to be reached. And I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I do not hate Muslims. I know some might think otherwise. After all I've endured, persecution, torture, rejection, but hatred has never taken root in my heart. When I met Jesus, what filled me instead was love. Love for those who wronged me. Love for those who still walk in darkness. Love for all people, without distinction. I carry no grudges. In fact, I love Muslims deeply, and it is precisely that love that drives me to speak, to testify, to warn, and to invite. Because of what I've seen and lived, I've reflected deeply on how religion can be used and misused. When its teachings are distorted, when leaders demand blind obedience without discernment, it can lead to harm instead of hope. So here is my plea, especially to those who follow Islam today. Read the Quran with your heart open. Don't limit yourself to what traditions or leaders have told you. Search for truth, honestly. The truth does not fear examination. We live in a time where information is within reach of anyone willing to look. Study, compare, reflect, and when you seek sincerely, God will reveal himself. I am living proof of that. If there is one truth that has anchored my life since meeting him, it is this: God is love. He doesn't merely have love, he is love, and where there is genuine love, there is God. Thank you for walking with me through my story, for listening to my pain, and for sharing in my joy. Yes, I still live under the shadow of a fatwa, a sentence with no expiration date. I remain cautious. I stay hidden. My life is still at risk, but I am not here to accuse or to condemn, and certainly not to paint all Muslims with the same brush. I know there are many with kind and generous hearts. What I do denounce is how certain passages of the Quran are twisted to justify violence. That must be addressed with truth, but also with compassion. Because my story is not unique. Around the world, there are thousands of Muslims who have encountered Jesus through dreams, just as I did. These testimonies are increasing in number every year. It is beautiful to see God at work in such miraculous ways. And yet, persecution of Christians in places like Iraq, Egypt, and Afghanistan remains a reality. People are imprisoned or killed simply because they believe in Jesus. We cannot ignore this. So I leave you with this request: pray for persecuted Christians, but also pray for their persecutors. Remember Paul, the apostle we honor so much, once a persecutor himself, who encountered Christ on the road to Damascus. If God could transform Paul, he can transform any heart. What moves me most about all this is seeing how God transforms even the most painful situations into miracles. I'm living proof of this. That brother of mine, yes, the very one who once stood among those who raised their weapons against me, is now a man of God. He has been reached and saved. He encountered the grace of Christ, was baptized, and is now living a completely new life. Only the love of God could make something like this happen. Only he has the power to take a hardened heart and soften it, to transform hatred into repentance, and to turn pain into redemption. I can never forget how it all began. It started simply because a Christian man had the courage to hand me a copy of the gospel. That was all. He didn't pressure me. He didn't try to manipulate or threaten me. He just planted a seed, and in time that seed took root in my heart. This is why I say, with all the love in my heart, do not be afraid to speak about Jesus. There are countless people wandering in darkness, thirsty for truth, longing for peace, without even realizing it. You can be the light that guides someone toward the path of life. Sometimes, all it takes to change the course of an entire lifetime is a word, a gesture, a gospel shared in love. We are the outstretched hands of Christ in this world. Another essential part of my journey was my honest desire to seek the truth. I truly wanted to know who God is. I wanted to discover if the God described in the Quran was the same as the one revealed through Jesus Christ. And God answered me, not only through words, but also through supernatural moments, deliverance, dreams, and protection that could never be explained away. One of the clearest examples of his hand over my life was that bullet, the one that struck my leg, but caused no bone fracture and left no lasting damage. That was no accident. It was a miracle. God's hand shielded me. I often say, the greatest bulletproof vest in the world is Jesus Christ himself. He is my protection, my shelter, my security. He could have allowed me to die on so many occasions, yet he chose to keep me alive. And if he did that, it is because there is still a purpose for my life. There is still something he wants me to accomplish. That is why I continue forward, even while living under threat, with my heart anchored in him. But my story is not just about me. It is meant to stir reflection in all of us. Have we been living the gospel in truth? When the chance to witness presents itself, do we speak or do we stay silent out of fear, shame, or convenience? I come from a direct lineage of Muhammad. I knew Islam from the inside, its deep traditions, its disciplines, its burdens. And yet, when I met Jesus, everything changed. For he is the Alpha and the Omega, the way, the truth, and the life. There is no other. My testimony is an invitation to examine our faith. I was prepared to die for Christ, but I also know that sometimes, in far smaller circumstances, people hesitate to even say, I am a Christian. Now is not the time to retreat. Now is the time to love courageously, even those who despise us. It is the time to pray for those who persecute us, because that is exactly what Jesus taught us to do. If my testimony has touched your heart, I ask you to pray for all who, like me, are being persecuted for following Christ. Pray for believers hiding in Iraq, Egypt, Iran. And yes, pray for those who hunt them. Think of Paul, the apostle we so admire. Before his transformation, he was a persecutor, a man feared by the early church. But on the road to Damascus, he encountered the living Christ, and his life was never the same. Jesus still meets people today, even those the world believes are beyond hope. I am living proof of that. And so I pray, Lord, awaken in us the same hunger for truth that you awakened in me. Let every heart burn with the desire to know you, to seek you with all that we are. I believe this moment right now is not accidental. Perhaps God is whispering to someone listening, my son, my daughter, come to me. I have things to reveal to you. I want to lead you, comfort you, and protect you. Let me show you who I truly am. I am Jesus. Amen, Lord. Now from the depths of my heart, I speak to you, my Muslim brothers and sisters, who may be watching this. You are loved, deeply and unconditionally, by Jesus. There is a place prepared for you at the great wedding supper of the Lamb. Just as he revealed himself to me, I pray he will reveal himself to you, because he is love. And love is not just an emotion or an idea. Love is a person, and that person is Jesus. I pray that every wall between us would fall. Let every prejudice and every judgment be broken down. May a love that is pure, true, and unshakable be born in our hearts, a love that flows directly from the heart of God. Jesus, I ask you, enter the lives of those who do not yet know you, and even those who believe they know you, but have never had a true encounter with you. Thank you, Lord, because I know it is your will that all people come to know you. You yourself have said, a light is not meant to be hidden under a basket, but placed on a stand to give light to everyone in the house. And we, as your followers, are called to be that light. Lord, make us living lights that shine not just through our words, but through our actions, through acts of compassion, mercy, and sacrificial love that point people back to you. Now, I want to extend a personal invitation. If you are watching this video, write in the comments the names of friends or loved ones from other faiths for whom you would like to pray, people you long to see encounter the love of God. Let's bring these names together before the Lord. He hears and he loves every single one of them. And I ask you this, which part of my testimony touched your heart most? Have you ever paused to examine the truth that guides your life, to ask yourself what purpose you are really pursuing? My story is not just about conversion, it is about courage. The courage to respond when God calls. Maybe this is your moment. Maybe you are wrestling with doubts, or weighed down by fear, or hearing that same voice that once called me, saying, come. Do not ignore that call. Today might be the day you experience something new with God, but you must ask yourself sincerely, Have I truly sought the truth with an open heart? Yes, my life was utterly transformed by Jesus. He protected me, He guided me, He saved me, and I know He can do the same for you. So if my testimony has touched you, share it in the comments. Tell us what part spoke to you most. We would be honored to pray for you. And if you know someone who needs this message, send it to them. Don't keep the light to yourself. Let it shine. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue following these stories of faith.